On this episode of Purposely Curious, we look into one of my favorite subjects, the mystery of Oak Island. Is there treasure buried there, and if so, who did it belong to? We look into some theories of whose treasure may have been on or is on this island. Also, I had one of my ditziest moments on the pod, so let me know if you catch it. So put your eye patch on and get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. ARRRR. Hello, Leonie.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm feeling like a stuffed turkey.
Oh, really? What did you have for Thanksgiving?
Oh, too much.
Too much?
It was a very small, quiet Thanksgiving this year. My sister and my mom, and yeah, we just had a nice little oven baked turkey, and the nice easy sides of like mashed potato and vegetables, and it was very quiet, very calm, very sign of the times. Everybody not being able or choosing not to be with their families, to keep them safe and all that, and some maybe not, some maybe found creative ways to be with their families and social distance and all that. So it's a interesting year, this one. How was yours? How was everything?
Mine was good. Also quiet. I went to my parents' house, so it was literally just my mom, my dad, and my brother. The four of us. We usually only hang out outside, either in the front yard, right, or the backyard. So we ate outside. My dad has like this fire pit chimney kind of thing, outdoor thing. So nice. He put it on, and my mom, we don't do turkey. My mom does this like Salvadorian chicken, which is so good, with rice. And so it's like, she's known for that in our family, for having such a bomb ass chicken.
Nice.
So, which my brother said he wanted to learn how to make, and I've attempted to make it like once, I think, but I should probably add that to my list of things to cook.
Yeah. Can you describe what that chicken is? Like, is there a sauce, or is there like a certain...
Yeah, so it's all in the sauce. Like, I can't even tell you. I mean, I think she puts mustard, tomatoes, but these are like fresh tomatoes that she blends.
Right.
There's olives in it. It's kind of like how they make the Salvadorian panes that they call, where they have like chicken or turkey in the bread.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But except my mom gives it a little bit of flair. I think it also has celery in it. I'm not sure, but it's super, super juicy. And then the juices, because you oven cook it,
right, you
can then put that juice on your rice or whatever it is,
Oh, nice.
You can make sandwiches. It's so good. So anyways, but yeah, it was just us four. So
nice.
I also have some leftovers in my fridge, so I'll probably
I'm coming over
those too. I'm sorry?
I'm coming over.
Oh. But yeah.
You're like, leftovers. I'm like, I'm coming over.
I'm like, no, not sharing. They're the best. No, I'm just kidding.
That's awesome.
But yeah, other than that, it was just us four, very quiet. And then I was back to work on Friday because we don't take days off, right, for work. But I'm glad that we are recording another episode.
Yay!
Now, this episode I wanted to do was about the mystery of Oak Island. Have you heard of Oak Island, Leonie? I
heard a little bit about it. I know it was in the news in recent years, maybe over the last 10 years or so, because of this mythical treasure that perhaps is buried on the island, and people that have been claiming that it's tied into maybe some historical treasure, maybe even some like conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And so it's something that always fascinated. Like when I was a kid, like I wanted to be like the Goonies. I wanted to go find a cave that leads to treasures and all that. But then as I grew older, I'm like, this is too complicated.
Yeah.
It's like, well, so there's an island, so what? And then you realize, well, you have to learn geology,
Yeah.
Then you have to learn like,
simple.
Topography. You have to learn like with the maps and it's just, God, it's just, so kudos to anybody who's into that or wants to get into that, because wow, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So, you brought up a good point. And there's so much history to Oak Island that I'm only going to touch the superficial stuff. I mean, there's so many theories, and a lot of them seem very plausible.
Right.
But I started watching a show called The Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel. Maybe it started in 2014, so it's been out for a few seasons.
Okay.
And just to keep it simple for you guys, they haven't found shit. It's but it's the guy from Ancient Aliens narrator.
Oh.
So it makes it so much more badass.
Right.
But in 2014, when the show started, I started watching it, and probably a few episodes in, I realized that I had read a book called The Lost Treasure of the Knights Templars by Stephen Sora. So I didn't realize the island was the same island of the show until it dawned on me. Like, I don't even know how many episodes in, but let's just say I was full on into the season, and then I was like, wait a minute, I think I read a book about this, and they might have mentioned the theory of the Templars. So I went into my library. Now, when I say library, it's literally my bookshelf. It's nothing crazy. Which I don't have the book anymore because when I moved, I got rid of a lot. I had so many books, but I'm already filling up my library again because I read so much. But I pulled it out and I was like, oh my God, it's the same fucking island. It's Oak Island. Now it has a show on the History Channel. So Oak Island is located in Nova Scotia. So it's up north here of the U.S. And so the stories say that there is a great treasure that was buried on Oak Island. If you look at a picture of Oak Island, it reminds me of Dumbo. Like, it looks like, I don't know, like a little animal, like a little elephant from the aerial footage.
Right.
But for centuries, people have been searching for the so-called buried treasures that is now famous, even more famous, at least for people of my generation, because of the show The Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel. Now, the reason the show, I'm not going to go into the whole curse thing, but the reason the show calls it The Curse of Oak Island, is because there was like a legend that said, 7 people would need to die to for it to be found, the treasure.
Right.
And so to date, 6 people have lost their lives in the quest for this treasure over a long period of like 100 plus years. And so the legend says there's one more. There is a memorial on Oak Island that states, the deaths from, I believe the first one was 1795 and the last one was 1995. But we're not going to go too much into that. What I will say, have you heard any of that yourself?
I've heard a little bit about it. I think I caught up on some reading on that. It was a while ago because this case intrigued me, because like stuff like the Knight Templars and all that you mentioned. I was always interested because of how they were rumored to be protectors of the church and the secrets of the Catholic Church. Like the Ark of the Covenant.
They weren't rumored. They were an official military of the Catholic Church.
Right, but I'm talking about like the rumored relics, like the chalice from the Last Supper that Jesus used. There's a scene in the, what movie was that? The Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where there's actually like a Knight Templar who's like 800 years old standing there guarding it. In the movie. So all that stuff really fascinated me because it's been tied to Illuminati and all these, interesting things.
So we'll touch a little bit on some of those things, but you just mentioned, the whole conspiracy thing, and we'll touch into it. But if you guys are history buffs and nerds like us, right, you will realize that the Knight Templars, Masonry, the whole Illuminati, they are all intertwined, right? So this is I'm not going to go too deep into that, but definitely we're going to talk about that. So basically we have Oak Island, right, in Nova Scotia. Back then there was talk among the villagers in surrounding areas, right, that maybe people didn't put much attention. It was kind of like folklore, stories back then, right? It's
Right.
not now how we document everything.
Right.
But the original treasure story was that a dying sailor who worked on Captain Kidd, who was in part of Captain Kidd's crew, said that there was treasure in Oak Island. So that was the initial story of where the treasure talk came in. So Captain Kidd is very famous, as you guys all know. But this guy was on his deathbed essentially, and was part of Captain Kidd's crew, and said that there in Oak Island there was a treasure. So for those of you who don't know who Captain Kidd is, he's a Scottish sailor who turned pirate, who later in his life settled in the New York City area, which
Right.
had been recently Anglicanized. Blah, blah, blah. It was a colony essentially in the colonies. And so, that's for those who don't know, the colonies were colonies that people from England and Europe came to set up like base and soon became the United States.
Right.
That's, my God, that's such a terrible, terrible history lesson there, but
What? It made sense. It's fine.
okay. So going back to Captain Kidd, so they were, vicious pirates, right? And so a lot of his legend, being that he was Scottish, was out here in America, right, in the United States.
Right.
So going back to the dying crew member, he stated that the treasure was buried in Oak Island that was worth 2 million pounds, whatever that was worth back then, right?
Wow.
Captain Kidd died in 1701. So this I guess theory of the treasure of Captain Kidd was after, because at that point Captain Kidd had already been, I guess he was like hung when he was found guilty of piracy and so much. So that the people started saying, oh, Captain Kidd's treasure is on Oak Island, because this guy who was dying essentially was saying, when I worked for him, we had to bury it, his treasure, and there was 2 million pounds worth of it. So now we're going to fast forward to 1799. There was this is kind of like a famous name in the Oak Island world, which is Daniel McGinnis. He was walking, looking for something, or like farmland or something,
Right.
when he noticed a depression on the ground. He himself had heard Captain Kidd's story, from the dying crew member, the accounts, right? So he thought it was odd that the depression was there. And so he automatically was like, oh, maybe this is the treasure, right? So he started digging, and he asked for help, as he kept digging, and he asked two men to help him, which was John Smith and Anthony Vaughan.
Right.
As they discovered, as they dug, they discovered several flagstones, which are stones that are generally rectangular shaped, that they use for fencing, floors, and so on. But they found these flagstones 2 feet below ground. So they were like, wow, they look human made, right?
Yeah.
2 feet below ground, which is how much, like how tall, if I'm 5 feet 2 inches, how many feet is that?
If you're 5 feet 2 inches,
Yeah.
it's 5 feet 2 inches.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Talk about stupid. Hello.
I'm like, I'm gonna fail this math quiz. I know I am. I know I am. Please don't do this to me.
Please do not edit this out. This is amazing.
Oh my god. Oh, this is hilarious.
It was. Oh, okay. Remember we talked about my ditzy moments?
Yeah, yours and mine. Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyways, I'm so hot right now.
Oh wow.
Okay, so they continued to dig and they found several oak platforms underground every 10 feet. So as they continued to dig every 10 feet, there was like a platform Meaning, you know how like when people deforest the forest and they put all the logs and line them up.
Right.
They found these oak logs made into a platform, and they found these layered every 10 feet, which is odd, right? Why would they find these like platforms? So every 10 feet there was another. And these logs are huge. So that was one of the key things that they were like, something is here, something is here.
Right.
Because it's very weird. If you guys have seen oak trees, it's for you. Something had to have been happening for them to have every 10 feet these platforms of just logs, right? So they kept digging. So I don't know if you've seen. I think if you look up the logs, they have like a characterization of how they looked. And so if you guys could look those up, you can see that it has to be man-made. And so every 10 feet they would go, there was more and more and more, right? They dug up to 30 feet deep. And that's when they started to get, I guess, superstitious themselves. So they kind of stopped. And so this was in, what year did I say this was?
This would have been, what,
1799.
Yeah.
So they stopped. And then approximately at 1802, there was a company who heard about this, who heard that they found the logs every 10 feet. So they were like, there must be something behind this. A company called Onslow continued the excavation and went up to 90 feet below. So they dug 60 feet more than the kids did, right?
Wow.
And they continued to find every 10 feet these oak log platforms. So that Mr. McGinnis had found, right?
Right.
And so they continued until I think at 60 feet, they found a stone. It maybe was probably one of these flagstones, but this one had an inscription on it. So that showed you that it was man-made, right?
Right.
But they couldn't decipher what the inscription was. So again, the treasure supposedly, right, of Captain Kidd, at least this is where we're at right now, right? They start digging, they find, these stones, and then every 10 feet they find these platforms of just logs of oaks just lined up every 10 feet to the dot. That's one weird. And then they find the stone 60 feet below ground with an inscription that no one can decipher. So there we talk about the whole Masonry and Templars. They were known for codes, right?
Right.
But this company went up to 90 feet, the tunnel that they had done to go down essentially got flooded with water. So they called off the search. That was in 1802. So fast forward to 1849, another company with investors started to re-excavate where this company had excavated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they went as far deep as the last company, about between 90 and 100 feet. And it also, again, the tunnel flooded again, right? They then said, let's change our tactics. So they started doing like boreholes, 5 on different areas, and they actually were able to get a little bit deeper than the other 2 excavations, and they were able to recover metal, like a metal thing that they thought was odd that they found like at 100 feet, and then again it flooded, right? So they gave up. In between 1860 and 1898, another company attempted again. Now, these are companies with a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
They attempted again to do it, and they failed again. And I believe there was also some people died in that excavation. But this one is a known fact that is pretty interesting. And it's in 1909, there was a company of Old Gold Salvage Group attempted as well to find this treasure. But do you know who was part of this group? He's famous.
1909. Doesn't ring a... No, I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell. Who was it?
So this is a what? This would be one, two, the third, fourth company looking for this buried treasure. Franklin D. Roosevelt
Ah,
was part of this group looking for treasure. And there's pictures of him at Oak Island with them. And he's young. He's, standing. So polio hadn't hit him yet.
right.
And so, yeah, he was there. Roosevelt had heard of the treasure talk on Oak Island from his grandfather, Warren Delano Jr., who was a sailor and trader who had also believed that the treasure was there on Oak Island. In presidential documents, obviously he became one of the presidents of the United States.
Right.
He would kind of write about, that when he was out there, he was always looking what's happening in Oak Island, newspapers and stuff like that. He was going to Halifax, which is a city just outside of Oak Island, and I think he wanted to stop. He was president by now, to stop and visit the site, but I think because of weather, he wasn't able to, is what I was able to read. But he was not looking for Captain Kidd's treasure. The story he heard was different. Do you know or have an idea of what treasure he was looking for?
No, I don't know. Like I always thought that everybody was looking for the treasure. I didn't know there was another. I know there was. It's tied into conspiracies, like one being like Marie Antoinette or
Yeah, well, you said it. That's the treasure he was looking for.
Oh, no
was
way.
her jewels.
Oh, okay.
So initially, the story came from a dying crew member that Captain Kidd had put his there. He actually was following another lineage of information, and that was for Marie Antoinette's jewels. And keep in mind, Franklin D. Roosevelt is a known Mason, right?
Oh, okay.
So supposedly the Knights of Templars became Masons.
Huh.
But we'll touch that later. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're a history nerd, you know that they were killed in the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette and the king, right, in 1791. As the revolution was happening, the rumors were that even though they couldn't save themselves, they were able to get all their jewels and treasures, like in a boat and like go away kind of thing. Like they were able to get them, but then they were caught and they were killed, right?
Yeah.
So no one knows where that treasure is. So this group, basically the old salvage group, which Frank Roosevelt was part of, right, was able to dig all the way up to 113 feet underground, but they themselves didn't find anything either. But he believed that it was Marie Antoinette's jewels that were there. Other groups have tried to find the so-called treasure, and up until now, you have the Curse of Oak Island show on the History Channel, where they are trying to find this treasure.
Huh.
But they're using like $1 million fucking shit, like drills and you name it. They don't find anything, obviously. Like I said, let's go back to, there's a lot of information out there, right? Roosevelt was a known Mason, right?
Right.
Masons, some believe, are the Knights of Templars who had to go underground and in hiding. The Knights of Templars were a Catholic military group that was founded in 1119 until they had to go underground around 1312. So they were part of the Crusades. You guys have seen that red cross on their gear. It's also tied in with, King Arthur. I mean, you name it. We've seen it in so many movies, but it's actually based on, this army of the Catholic Church who would protect, you guys know that the Vatican has a lot of money. Yep. The Vatican they even have stock portfolio, by the way. But back then, they essentially ruled the world because all the kings bowed to them, right?
Right.
So that's where the whole, if it was the Templars. Now, why do I bring that up in Roosevelt? It's because there are a lot of things that have been found on Oak Island that are not considered treasures. But you know, like back then, pirates used to do like carve things in stone to know where they left, you know, or to navigate where the treasures are, right?
Right, right.
So they have found a lot of stones who have been, you know, carved a certain way, and some of them have known Knights of Templar type of, you know, symbols. And so that's where the conspiracy, it just adds to the treasure, right?
Right.
So this is a Templar, you know, cross here, or, you know, the pyramid here. So people are assuming that they put a treasure there. Now, we're not talking about Captain Kidd anymore, right?
Yeah.
So the Captain Kidd story just talks about the treasure that's in the island. Now we're talking about Knights of Templar, like stuff that they have found throughout the entire island, not underground, but just people think that these emblems that they're seeing and the stones is probably trying to show them where the treasure was.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, it's interesting looking at the map of Nova Scotia and the islands, you know, that connect that whole region of Canada. It's if you were leaving the United States to go to Europe and pretty much anywhere in Europe, right? Like you would probably pass Nova Scotia, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd either go right through it if you're in Maine, or if you're like in New York and Boston, you would pass right by it. Like you would be to your left, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
looking north, you know. So I'm starting to wonder that, is it possible? Do you think that all these hidden treasures are there, but on the wrong, in the wrong location? Like maybe it's not Oak Island. Maybe it's like Prince Edward Island, which is right, you know, nearby.
I don't know. They're all focusing on Oak Island, and I'm sure because the other islands are a lot smaller, they probably have looked over there as well. But I don't know. What I know that in season 3 of the Oak Island show, they did find a Roman sword, uh, which they thought was very interesting that they found. There's pictures of it online. But they
Right.
were able to find a Roman sword in the New World. So it had to be
Interesting.
it had to be brought there
Right.
by someone. There's also a theory that there was a Spanish naval treasure that was brought there in the 16th century, because there was a ship that had a lot of like treasures and gold, you name it, which had gone missing in that area. So people believe that maybe they sunk it in that area,
Right.
and that, you know, could explain why there was a Roman, let's say that was true, 1600 Spanish naval ship. I mean, this is ancient fucking sword, but that's
Right.
the biggest thing they have found in the show. They
Huh.
find coins all the time that are really old, but nothing crazy, you know. There's also this detailed map that was found by Zen Halpern. Halpern. She is a historian, and so there is a 12th century. I guess there's a map from 1647 that has a very detailed representation of the island, and it has a hatch, valve, and anchor written on it, and it has like it's pointing to where these things are. But we don't know if there's any truth to that. I think if you look at the show, they're obviously putting a lot of money into this.
Right.
And the city the city has to give permission because you need permits to dig. So obviously the city is wanting them to find something. Also, I'm assuming that, you know, there's going to be money coming from tourism, so they probably benefit from it. But they have found some stuff that's really old, but nothing treasure, like crazy treasure stuff. There's a lot of stuff they find that do look like Templar crosses, stuff like that, and
Right.
coins. And then there's that Roman sword they found. There's a lot of theories, like I said. The issue is, did someone already find this? So let's say we're out there, all these people for hundreds of years are looking for this treasure.
Right.
Could the pirates have gone back and excavated it a long time ago and people are just wasting their time and they're just finding
Yeah.
the little bits and pieces that they didn't take? I personally I don't think there's well, I don't know. I think someone must have gone back and excavated it and didn't say anything. There is a theory as well that there used to be a man who used to be a slave. I don't remember his name right now. He was freed right after the Civil War, went to Oak Island, and then all of a sudden people said he had, like, you can see the plot of lands they all have.
Right.
He all of a sudden became wealthy and people couldn't figure out why. So some people speculate that he may have found the treasure because he went from being like, slave to being free to all of a sudden having a lot of wealth. And so he bought land on Oak Island. So people are like, maybe it was on his land. It's just a theory.
Right.
That he could have found it just because people were, the neighbors talk, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
all of a
yeah.
sudden he's rich. Like, what? Like, how? But yes, if you guys go online, you guys can find like pictures or of the excavation of the money pit, right? So 10 feet down, there was a layer of stones. Then every 10 feet, they had those oak platforms, right?
Right.
And then they found a code message, on a stone about between 80 and 90 feet, right? Supposedly, they think there's a chest with loose metals in by 100 feet. Some people think that there are tunnels that come from the shore below that where the other treasures are.
Huh.
So there's theories that there's treasures up to, below 200 feet underground.
Oh, interesting.
And so they think that there are like water tunnels that were built from the shoreline of the Oak Island that go into where the money pit is, where these chests are.
Huh.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail because it warrants a lot more information, but there is kind of like a water tunnel that they found in Oak Island, but they don't know. It starts like on the beach area, but they don't know where it goes. So they suspect that's why when people were, doing the tunnels to get to the treasure, it kept flooding because it's salt water that's going in there. So it's definitely traveling to the middle of the island. But I don't know.
Interesting. You ever heard of the Francis Bacon theory?
No.
It's believed that aside from the treasures, that there's a possibility there's manuscripts that could be there by Francis.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, you were saying?
I was gonna say, is this about Shakespeare?
Yes.
Yes, I did. So they found parchment paper, and so that's where the theory came from when they were down there, that those manuscripts could be there. But it's only, they suspect. There wasn't like necessarily, they didn't like get up his Shakespeare books, right?
Yeah.
It was Sir Francis Bacon. Yes.
That'd be crazy because it's like that would change some history in Italy, because obviously there's locations where they're like, this is, where Juliet's window was. This is the house where Juliet lived, like where they claim that all these stories were written by Shakespeare of actual locations,
Mm-hmm.
So if that's not Shakespeare's work, and if that's Francis Bacon's work, that's all made up. So it's like, well, that changes everything,
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about the Templars, right? Some people suspect that the treasure is because if it was the Templars that then became the Masons, right?
Right.
They were protectors of the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. And so some people believe that's down there. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. You should look into this. There's a lot of books, but if you guys are just into like crazy, stupid, like they don't find shit every week, but you love it, watch Oak Island, The Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel.
It's still on? Is it still an ongoing thing?
It's still going. And that's why I find that very odd. Like, I feel like maybe they know or they have found something. They're just trying to milk it for what they can.
Okay.
Because they always find coins. I mean, the Roman sword was like the biggest thing I've noticed. Well, they also found a Templar cross. I know that. But I enjoy the show. Yeah.
So you also heard about the Lagina brothers, right?
Yeah, Lagina. Yeah.
Lagina, like I forget that wrong. The Lagina brothers.
Yes, I have a big crush on Rick Lagina. So I had posted like a year ago a picture of him, like a video of him. I was watching it. So he's like this guy who has like a white beard and he has like long, luscious hair. And he's, you know, he's 68 years old and I think he's so hot. Like,
so he's still on the show, right?
He's still on the show, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So these two brothers in 2006, they interested in pursuing, you know, this treasure, of course, with, you know, full time, you know, with their livelihood and everything. They struck some deal, right, where they purchased 50% of the Oak Island Tour Company, which included land on the island. Mm-hmm. And the rights to any treasure found in it. That's the part that really like surprised me because it's like wow. So whatever they find, they own.
Not necessarily, because the government is in it too, because they have to get permits, and they also were asked by the government to put archaeologists on there.
Okay.
But going back to the Lagina brothers, they actually Rick was obsessed with treasure hunting, and there was a Reader's Digest article about Oak Island that was published in 1965 when he was 11 years old, and he was obsessed with Oak Island ever since then. And so they did well, right? And so they have money, and now I think as of now they own pretty much the whole island. There was two, Dan and I forgot the other guy's name. They had bought a lot of the land. They both have since passed in the last 2-3 years. So they've left it up to the Lagina brothers. They practically own it as of this year, I think. But yeah, I've been obsessed with this show. And the trippy thing about this show is that I didn't realize I was watching a show in the first season of a book that I had read before. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I was obsessed with the Knight Templars at one point, but the Lagina brothers don't really touch. They touch on the Knights Templars, but they look at all these theories. There's so many theories out there, which we talked about, the whole Roosevelt and Marie Antoinette. We talked about Captain Kidd. So they kind of go through all of those theories. There's like fucking 20, and every year it seems like there's another theory. And the Ancient Aliens narrator makes it sound so feasible that it could have been this theory. And then next week it's another theory, and you're like, oh my God, that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
I'm obsessed. But yes. So I thought that was really interesting. So Marty Lagina and Rick Lagina are the main hosts of the show. They have other investors that are also part of it. But if you ever watch the show, you can see from season 1 to about season 3, season 4, where the government starts to kick in.
Okay.
Because they start getting all these hurdles. So they will not own the treasure.
Oh,
if they find one, it has to go. It'll become like public property. But I'm sure there is some contract maybe they have with them, maybe.
Right.
But yeah. So yeah, my man crush Rick Lagina. Look him up, guys. He's 68 years old. Such a hottie. His white beard.
Calm down.
Yes. So
I was thinking though, there's 2 of them. And the curse says there needs to be 7.
Yes.
and 6 have died already.
Yeah. The thing too
I mean,
is
isn't
the
that
weird
weird?
thing. Yeah, 6 have died already. And then the 2 guys that died of old age living in Oak Island, like these 2 guys, I don't know. So I don't know about the curse. I think there was one when there was a gas explosion where a father and son died.
Huh.
So, you know, there have been accidents on there. So that is that's where the whole curse of Oak Island comes in.
Right.
So I was thinking you had these 2 guys who died of old age looking for the treasure, and they died of old age. So I'm like, wouldn't they count as well? Or does it have to be a fucking accident? You know what I mean?
I don't know. Maybe just being there looking for the treasure. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what, you know.
Because then that would put it at 8.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but what do I know? I'm not that superstitious. I don't know that I believe the curse too much, but
Right.
if, you know, if you guys look up the money pit, like drawings of the money pit, so that when I was talking about every 10 feet there was logs, platforms, so that you can see kind of a depiction of what I was talking about. I'm not the best narrator. But there are, you know, depictions, you know, where they've mapped out how these logs were found, you know, and the oddest thing. So let's say that the treasure's not there. Let's just say there's no treasure. This is man-made. They went down 200 feet underground.
Right.
And these logs are fucking old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so what was the purpose? Was this island man-made? I don't know. So obviously something's up in that island. And so there's been, you know, millions of dollars throughout the centuries spent on finding nothing. Well, I mean, they have found stuff, and look at Mr. Roosevelt. He was obsessed with Oak Island as well. President of the United States.
Yeah.
Who also happened to be a Mason.
Right.
Who some people believe were the Templars. Right? So it's all intertwined, and it all can be possible. If you ask me.
Yeah. you know, it's interesting. What sticks out to me is the Roman sword that was found. If it's truly authenticated that it is, you know, a Roman sword from that period, you know, of history, then that would mean that the Romans had touched down here in the U.S. thousands of years ago.
I mean, it could, but it could also mean that, let's say, the Templars or someone who had all these you know, like Marie Antoinette, all these treasures they could have also brought it in. So yes, I understand what you're saying,
because
but it could also
that would
mean
change
it was
history
part
as
of
well.
Treasure. It would, yeah.
Because then it's like you have post the birth of Christianity, and now you have Christianity here thousands of years before the Spanish came.
Yeah. Well, the Vikings came before the Spanish.
Right.
So that already has changed history.
Right.
But Americans were already here. They weren't lost. I just had to put that out there. But yes. So it could be that the Romans were out here, if that is authenticated, or it could be that someone brought it as part of treasure.
Yeah, part of treasure, right? Collectible, whatever.
Collectibles, yeah. So I don't know, if from the theories that we talked about, which one would like to believe that is true?
I would say the collectible, because if it is, you know, let's say they find more stuff that's, you know, related to Roman Empire, it's like that changes way too much history, you know? Mm-hmm. So much so that it's like, well, you know, then that means Christianity was here because that's what they were doing after, you know, after that began. They were spreading it, you know, throughout the Middle East and the world. And if so, who were they talking to? You know, were they the natives that were here? Were there natives? You know, if so, how far how far west did they go into the United States? You know, mm-hmm. Like were there any people you know, occupying that northeastern land? Because obviously it's cold, you know, and you probably can't grow much out there, you know, during those times. So yeah, there's a lot of questions I have about that, but I'm curious that if it, you know, that would be interesting. But same time, I just want to say, hey, it's collectible and somebody brought it here, and it was just found there, you know?
Yeah. So obviously they have found coins that are older than when the Spanish had come out here as well. But
Right.
again, the question is, did were these coins from other countries, were they here before them, or were they brought in by the Spanish? So
Right.
that's something we will never ever know. At least I don't think in my lifetime, but definitely Oak Island. There's more to it. I guess I only touched the top of it, right? But we talked about the theories out there, and I guarantee you there's more theories that I'm not even aware of. But there's tunnels, the more they dug, they found these tunnels, and I mean, you name it. Now with technology, they're obviously spending a lot of money, but it could be just for the show. They're trying to milk it as much as they can because I
Right.
think it's their most watched show on History Channel.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So they might be just milking it. Either that, or if they did find something worth, having the government come in, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which I suspect, because the government, literally you see the change like a few seasons in where all of a sudden it's like they're making their life, like they have to get permits. So maybe there is something we don't know about and maybe they're withholding it. I don't know.
Huh.
Anyway, look into Oak Island, guys.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's almost like part of the story here, going back to the three young teenagers, the three boys. It
Yeah.
almost feels like this is a Goonies story, It feels like the movie The Goonies, because that's what they were put on the adventure with all their friends to go look for the pirate ship and the gold and all that,
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like some of this is part of that, So I don't know if that was influence on the movie. It could have been, but
Could have been.
yeah,
Huh.
this is
Never
really
thought of that.
fascinating. This is really interesting, and I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know from this TV show. And I know you follow it. I'm curious to know what they find, and I hope we don't have to wait till season 8 or season 10 or whatever to find out.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it's almost like from what I've seen, they always find coins, and they always find. I mean, they found a Templar type cross that you could tell
Right.
looked like from a necklace. They found the sword, but those are really the only major things that they have found. Now, a lot of what's documented historically, it seems like the best stuff that they found was decades ago, hundreds of years ago.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm just curious to see what they come up with. But I think that if there was treasure there, it's not there anymore.
I like
But
your theory, though.
I'm
I like what you mentioned. The theory that the pirates probably came here, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and took it.
Yeah, yeah. But I find it more believable, the whole Captain Kidd one, especially if the guy was dying on his deathbed, worked for him.
Right.
But it would be nice to think that there's a Templar Knight thing to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because there was a lot of movement by the Templars at that time as well. So that's why I thought it was very interesting to see that Roosevelt was very intrigued by it, even though his wasn't so much Templars. But supposedly Templars are Masons, right?
Yeah.
Not the same like back then, obviously. It's not
Right.
the same.
Right.
But interesting.
There's also that interesting discovery that connects it to the Templar, the discovery of a bone fragment they found.
Oh, that's another thing. They have found human bones
Yeah.
down deep at 100 feet. And they have done their DNA sequence, and they're a couple hundred years old. So yes, thank you for reminding me about that. That
Yeah.
was also on the show. Obviously with the technology now. So
Right.
that only can prove one thing is, all these platforms that were put every 10 feet all up until, 200 feet. Probably, why is there... I think the bone was like Middle Eastern.
It was, yes.
Yeah, so that's odd, right?
It is,
See, I
because
remember.
yeah, the cool thing with science, you can carbon date that, and you can look back to see, okay, how old is this thing? And if it turned out to be a couple 100 years, 300, 400 years old, whatever it is, and it's not from here, then that rules out any locals, any natives that grew up or
Yeah. So some
inhabited the
people
area.
think it could be like a slave, right?
Right.
That they
Right.
brought over.
Right.
The Roman Empire, right?
Hmm.
Would that be considered Middle Eastern
Oh yeah.
area
Oh,
now?
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not today, not present day, but during that time, yeah, they occupied all of like Europe and the Middle
Yeah.
East.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
widespread.
yeah. So thank you for reminding me about that. I completely didn't remember that. But I think they found two human bone specks. One I know for a fact was Middle Eastern, and I don't
Right.
know what the other one was, but they were two different people. So yeah. So how did it get down underground? It's
Right.
not 6 feet underground. It's like 100 feet
Yeah.
underground. So again, there's tunnels and all this stuff. So people believe, slaves were used to get the treasure down there, and kind of like mining.
Right.
But again, no one really knows. But yes, that is another thing they found. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Dun, dun,
definitely a
dun.
really fascinating place on Earth because we there's just so many movies about pirates and gold and treasures and buried and secrets and all that and so it's like I think that fascination will never end.
Yeah.
We as viewers, as consumers of this kind of stuff, it's like it's a fantasy. It's like, wow, we found something that's 2,000 years old, or the Ark of the Covenant, or gold or whatever. So because we live in a modernized world, we never believe that underneath our feet somewhere there's something buried, because
Yeah.
we're in the heart of Los Angeles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that fascinates me to no end. So yeah, this is exciting. This is fun. This is something, I mean, I want to hope that we find something significant and more of it, or, you know, the mother lode to say, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine they found something crazy. Ugh. That would be awesome. But
yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
yeah, right.
They're like 7, 8 seasons in, so I'm not too excited, but I just wanted to go over kind of like the history.
Hmm.
Like I said, there's many theories. All of these theories are historical.
Right.
So if you like and are curious, look into the Oak Island. Maybe not look into what's going on now, but just the history. I mean, to see that one of our presidents of the United States was also on Oak Island in his youth
Yeah,
looking for fucking treasure.
I know, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's something that I found very intriguing and I was very curious about. So I hope you guys learned something, and I tried to get as much as I could that would be important, but like I didn't even think to talk about the bone fragments they found. It's just a lot.
I know, there's a lot. There really is a lot.
There is a lot, and that's where all the theories come in, which can be overwhelming. Now,
Right.
this is me. I read that book that I mentioned, The Lost Treasure of the Knights of Templars, like
Hmm.
15 years ago.
Wow.
So that was just on that. And then, the show comes out in 2014, and it dawned on me like episodes in. I was like, holy shit, I think I just read a book about this like 10 years ago or however many years ago it was. But I'm definitely intrigued by it. And so that's why I love the show, even though there's a lot of filler episodes, which sometimes I'm like, oh, come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's cool.
that's it for this, unless you have anything else to say.
Keep digging.
Keep digging.
You'll find it, guys. Keep digging.
Yes, yes. So one of the guys on the show says every time he finds a coin, he says, "It's a coin." He's like Irish, I think. That's my terrible, terrible impersonation, but I love the way he says it. He's
Right.
so cute. It's a coin. That's what, he finds with his metal detector. So,
That's fine.
yeah. So if your kid wants to find treasure, encourage them. You never know.
I know, right?
It's nice to imagine things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Go seek
But-
out adventure.
Yes, seek it out. Well, thank you, Leonie, for another episode.
'Twas fun. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and everyone stay safe out there and wash your hands
Yes. Twice.
twice. Yeah. All right. See you guys next time. Bye. That was episode 40 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.